You're probably thinking, everybody's thinking like, how many dogs on my property?
Okay, we're live.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. Can we just make that motion?
Finance.
Okay, let's, are we ready to get started with the work session?
I'll work with it.
All right, we'll call the work session to order. Ms. Whitten, would you take roll for us?
Supervisor Lewis,
Present.
Supervisor Day,
Here.
Supervisor Ayers,
Here.
Supervisor Lyons,
Here.
Chairman McDaniel.
Here. Mr. Spencer?
Okay, this first topic is the salary survey results. And this has been a fairly extensive process led by Ms. Hoke. She couldn't be here today. She is ill and didn't want to give it to any of us. So this afternoon, Ms. Margaret Schmidt from the Berkeley Group is with us to provide an overview of the salary survey that was recently completed for the county. Margaret retired from Lynchburg City, where she spent many years as the HR director. Please recall that we shared the cost of the actual survey with the other localities with Lexington. Lexington's doing the same thing, so we shared those costs with Lexington. We customized ours a bit though, so that we weren't being compared to some major cities, and you'll see that in a little bit. We're compared a little bit more geographically closer to us, so as not to skew the data. And our goal for the work session is to work through the methodology, the findings, and the recommendations of the Berkeley Group. And Margaret has a presentation to share, and we had some technical difficulties, but we think we're there now.
All right. So good afternoon, Chairman, Board of Supervisors, Mr. Suter. I'm glad to be here representing the Berkeley Group. My colleague in this endeavor was Jennifer Wisselman. She is unfortunately in York County today, so doing some interviews, so unable to be with us. As Mr. Suter said, we did work primarily with Heidi, and she's been really good to work with. The county has been very helpful and got us in good shape here. So I should be able to share my screen, do you think?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so let's see if we can. All right, so as do my quick Berkeley commercial, you may be more familiar with Berkeley through organizational assessments and land use planning, comprehensive planning, those kinds of things. We've been growing the HR arm of the company for the last few years. And you can see we've worked with a lot of your neighbors and a lot of your neighboring jurisdictions. So we've built a fair amount of business across the state, working with mostly small organizations to do things like pay studies and provide HR assessments and a variety of things. So what we're going to do today is really just start with the highest level. When we began our engagement with the county, we met with the county administrator, HR director, and set some goals. What were you looking to do? Why a study? Why now?
Hey, Margaret, you might want to start from beginning so you got the whole screen there.
Ah, I see.
All the way to the left. There you go.
Let's see if we can do this. There we go. Is that better? No, it's still not giving me the
I'll just go from beginning.
slide. Hang on a second here. Slideshow. From the beginning. Well, it's showing the full.
That's okay. We can just go on.
It's showing it on my screen and it is not showing it on yours. So
That's fine.
Not sure why that is. Is there another? Okay. So as I said, we started off with a goal setting meeting to make sure that we were all on the same page. The county's Goal was to obviously be able to continue to attract and retain a qualified workforce, to also reduce turnover, but to maintain that employer of choice status in the region. The county has a very good reputation for being a good place to work, and we want to make sure that the pay systems are competitive, while of course balancing your fiscal responsibility. It's always important to consider those constraints. We wanted to look at individual pay that reflects the value of the employees, their work, and their commitment to the county. So they're long-standing in some cases. And then we are faced with some mandated minimum wage increases from the General Assembly, and the county wanted to get ahead of those. The next of those changes takes place on January 1st, 2023. And then there are a couple of additional increases programmed over the next 3 years. So we wanted to try to get ahead of that.
Sorry.
Okay. As we set our goals, what did we want to achieve with the study? What would success look like? We also identified some foundational principles. So wanted to look at competitiveness. One would like to match the market. We don't feel like we can really lead the market in every case, but we also don't want to fall behind the market and lag the market. Generally, just as a general compensation theory, pay that falls between 95% and 105% of the market. It's like 5% below to 5% above those market averages is considered competitive pay. We are in a somewhat unprecedented time as it comes to workforce labor pressures. There are fewer applicants than we've ever seen, and unfortunately, higher expectations. So we want to be as competitive as we can as an organization so that you can attract and retain. That awareness also of what the available labor market looks like, what your competition is doing, and how the labor force is changing. We, as I said, are in a situation where employees have perhaps more leverage than they have had in the past. A lot of that has been driven by public safety, but it is really a labor shortage across the board. We're especially seeing challenges in jobs that require a commercial driver's license, that are performing manual labor, and public safety, especially law enforcement. And then, as I mentioned, we want to ensure that your pay structure accommodates new and updated mandates towards minimum wage. So I'm going to talk a lot about averages today. What we do is we go to the market and we gather averages, and then we aggregate those averages so that what we're looking at is ultimately a comparison of Rockbridge County's systems, both their pay structure and their actual employee pay, against those average of the averages in the market. To just give you a brief overview of our process, we start with your jobs. We start with understanding your jobs. We pride ourselves on understanding local government and why you do the work, why your employees do the work they do, what work they do. We've been there. We know that. So we've reviewed all of your job descriptions, and then we identify benchmark jobs, those jobs that are usually shared by other organizations we can get data on. And as Mr. Suda mentioned, we did do a combined survey with the city of Lexington. We did separate analysis once we got the data in, but we did send out one survey to accommodate jobs that are both in the city and in the county. We're able to achieve a little bit of savings that way. So we gather that data from the marketplace, from the comparison organizations, compare it to the current situation in the county, and then start to develop options that would align with your goals, align with your internal equity, with your culture. Want to tailor those options to what makes sense for you. A one-size-fits-all does not work when you're looking at individual organizations.
Or you might want to move your slide I think you're on the third slide.
What is on my screen is not matching what is there.
You scroll it down.
That is frozen.
Why don't you just click on that slide to the left?
Let's see here. It's not,
There you show internet.
we're not making, it's not making any changes.
Does that require the internet to work?
No, she's on.
It should not.
Well, the board has a hard copy of this. I think because we're going to be in limited time, we're still trying to get a budget meeting in.
Right. So I
So
apologize.
you're on slide 4.
Is that page 4 for us?
Page
I
3.
should be on
Page
slide
3.
5,
Page 3.
on slide 5.
Okay.
And I
That's
don't
all right.
know why that's not changing. Let me quickly here stop and start again just to see.
There you go.
We might be better off, unfortunately, just going this way. Because I think that, well, it's still not changing them.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
No, I'm not touching it.
So does that change? Yeah.
Yes.
So let's go this way because we are at least getting what I'm talking about up there, even though you have the sidebar. So this is the general process that we go through. So after we've gathered and started to analyze the data, then we start to develop options and estimates of what those costs and work with the county to identify those best options. The market data collection is very important. And so we identified comparison organizations. As we mentioned, the survey itself had a broader list of comparison organizations. And we found that the larger cities and the universities were skewing the data that applied to the county. So we did narrow the comparisons to these that you see in front of you, to Amherst County, Botetourt, City of Buena Vista, Augusta County, Allegheny County, and the City of Lexington. We also have access to a little bit of some private sector data through a purchased salary-based resource that the Berkeley Group has. And we were able to use that in a pretty limited perspective for jobs like custodians and some mechanic kinds of jobs. The important thing to remember, I think, about this market data collection is it identifies a snapshot in time. We send a survey out, we gather information through either research or those survey responses, and it really represents what's going on in that comparison organization right at that time. So, if we were to ask this question today, we'd get a slightly different answer. Because just like your organization, people are getting promoted, people are leaving, you're hiring new people. So you can't put but too fine a point on the data because it is, number one, the average of the averages, and number two, it is kind of a point in time data, our point in time picture. However, we did get a significant amount of data. We believe it's valid, it's consistent across the data. It is from the organizations that are most comparable to you and are most likely to be looking for employees in the same place that you're looking for employees. They're the organizations that are going to be the ones most likely that your employees will go look to if they wanted to make a change. So we do think the responses were solid. We did get enough data for most of the jobs. If we did not have enough data for an individual job, then we attached that to a comparable job that we did get data for. At a very high level, we did get sufficient data to assess the 40 jobs within the county, covers about 87 positions, actual employees. And what we found is that we're looking in two big broad areas. The first is your pay structure. So that's your grades and ranges. Those are really where you greet the market, where you say, okay, we have a job and it pays from here to there. And so that really does impact your recruitment, where you can actually hire people. And we found that the county's pay ranges do lag the market they're behind the market, but there's a wide variety of variance there. Everywhere from minimums that are over 20% behind the market to some that are ahead of the market. So while they're an overall average does kind of help you for trends, you're really needing to dig into it a little more deeply for it to make sense. We also found that individual pay falls behind the market. And again, there's a wide variance. Some employees' individual pay is as low as 77% of the market, which is, get my math here, 23% behind the market, to some long-term employees who are making above the market average. So our general recommendations are that you take a multi-step approach, that you first revise your pay structure to both get ahead of the mandated minimum wage increases and to kind of make sure that you are approaching the labor market in a competitive way so that you can attract employees. And then following that pay structure revision, assign the jobs to competitive pay range. So we're not talking about actual employees yet, but you want all of the jobs in the right grade so that they are competitive with the market. Then we look to align employee pay with both market averages and the parameters of those pay ranges. When we look at the structure, dig deep, a little bit deeper into that data, we found that there were 10 county positions with a minimum below more than 10% off the market. And they ranged from about 79% all the way up to 89.5%. Just give you an example, the collection attendants, that's a job that you have quite a few people in that job. That job is lagging the market by almost 20%. So your competitors, your comparison organizations on average are paying about 20% more. So you can see how that might impact your retention, where somebody could have, go not very far and get a comparable job at potentially higher pay. You do have 20 positions that are between 90 and 100%. They range from 90 to 98. An example there is your firefighter medic job, which is at just a little bit over 5% behind the market. Public safety right now is a very volatile market. It's a lot of market pressures for a lot of reasons besides pay, but certainly pay is one of them. And then you have 10 jobs that are at 100% or higher than the market minimums. So that ranges from 100 to 103. You don't exceed the market with very many jobs and not by very much. So an example there is your fleet technician is that minimum of that job is about 4% above the market. When we look at individual pay, now so I'm going to kind of switch from your overall structure to what does individual employee pay look like. We looked at every current employee at their current base pay salary, and we compared that to what the market, what those comparison organizations are paying on average for the same job. We found that 53 employees pay is less than 90%, so 10% or more behind the market. 8 were more than 20% behind the market, and 45 were in that 80 to 90%. You also have 34 employees pay who's above 90% of the market, and you can see they're evenly split in the 90s, and then 17 that are 100% or higher. So you can see that you're going to see actually, and especially at the higher and the lower levels, a little bit of skewing because some jobs are very low, a few jobs are fairly high. Typically, those higher comparison jobs are long-term employees, people who have been with you for a long time and have been able to advance their salary over time. Just to give you an example, again, these are not individual people, but the job classes, the job families, then where their employees pay fit compared to those market averages. We already talked about the collection attendants. Not only is the range for the job, the collection attendant's low, so is the actual average employee pay. Your operational jobs, you see that those tend to fall behind the market a bit. Your department directors and managers are also falling behind the market. Your firefighters, again, on individual pay are falling behind the market. Let me stop for a second and see if you have any questions so far.
No, ma'am. You can continue.
keep on going?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So from that data, we worked with Heidi and looked at, all right, what are some recommendations, those overarching recommendations? And as I said before, we first want to tailor the actions to fit Rockbridge County's, what your goals are, what your culture is, what your internal equity. A goal was to revise the pay structure to be at least, to lead the market a bit and get ahead of some of those upcoming minimum wage increases. So we revised proposing revising the pay structure to start at $13 per hour, not as high as the General Assembly intends for it to go, a little bit higher than what will take place in January of 2023. The next recommendation is to then use the market data about the market ranges and assign the jobs to a competitive pay range. Following assigning the jobs to a competitive pay range, we recommend that you provide a competitive general wage increase. I think you typically call that a COLA, not maybe directly linked to cost of living, but that's kind of the terminology that you use. And then address individual pay that might still lag the market after you take those couple of actions. So from a step perspective, you would first revise the pay structures to start at $13 per hour. Follow your same general methodology where there's 5% between each of the grades and the ranges are about 60% wide. That gives your employees some earning potential. They can essentially, with regular increases, that pay range is going to accommodate their salaries. We would then assign the jobs to that competitive pay grade. And we recommend then that you bring all the employees' pay to at least the minimum of that new pay grade. Your policies, as most, say that an employee's pay is going to be, no lower than the minimum, no higher than the maximum. So once you assign those jobs to new pay grades, bring everybody at least to the minimum of those ranges, and that's going to be an investment there. We then would recommend that you then award a general wage increase, quite honestly, as much as you can afford and are comfortable paying. We are hearing that most of the regional organizations are are budgeting 4 to 5%, potentially 6%. You've read the news, you know that the state is anticipating providing, in either budget, is looking to provide significant increases to both teachers, state employees, and sheriff's deputies, which will increase the pressure on localities. A general increase, though, does do a couple of things for you. It helps you maintain that competitiveness. We talked about that you have some employees whose pay is currently fairly competitive. You want to maintain that competitiveness, and a general wage increase does that for you. It also moves employees' pay away from the minimum. If you were able to implement our recommendations, almost half of your organization will go to a new minimum, which means they may have multiple years of service and their pay will be at the minimum of the range. A general wage increase helps move that pay away from the minimum so that they're not making the same as the next employee that you hire. They're coming in lower than your current employees, which isn't a factor that employees, they just don't like that. You know that if an employee has more years of service, they have gained experience, they have demonstrated a commitment to the county. It's really a dissatisfier to see somebody brand new coming in at your same pay or pretty close to it. So a general wage increase will do that for you. we recommend that you then compare those results. And so after you've brought the employees to a new minimum and you've given a general wage increase, then let's take a look at where does the pay now compare to that market average actual? Where does it compare to the minimum of the range? And see if you can make some additional targeted actions that would bring employees' pay closer to that 90% of that more competitive position to the market. Throughout, you want to review for pay equity. You want to consider individual adjustments for similarly situated employees so that those adjustments are the same. You want consistency and equity in all of these actions. Our next steps would be based on your discussion and your decisions, then to help the county actually tailor the recommendations a little bit further and be able to implement according to the decisions that you've made. We want to address any concerns or follow-up questions. We then help the county communicate if they need it. We have some communications that have worked well in other places. We can make some suggestions on just kind of how to tell people the results of the study and how it's going to impact them. We ultimately will send all of the data that we've collected to Heidi. And we also encourage you to pay attention to it over the next few years. A pay study is, as I said, that snapshot in time, and it gets out of date pretty quickly. So a regular review of how competitive your pay is, typically that's internal. You don't need somebody like me to come in and tell you every year how you're doing. Maybe every 3 to 5 years, you need a little outside help, but normally your staff can just kind of keep tabs on how that's going, but we encourage you to do that. So that's the last of my remarks. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they would like to ask?
Any questions from the board?
Well, I will ask for the people that might already be at 100, let's just say that we have a couple of 110 or 120. I'm not sure if that.
I think your highest is lead the market by about 5 or 10%, something like that. Yeah.
So how you would say a COLA would be the best way to approach that so that it keeps morale up, but doesn't necessarily get you out of line with.
Right.
You want to keep morale up.
Typically, you want to look at staying competitive. Where you are competitive is kind of 2 actions that you want to look at. You might want to take action, consider action to ensure that the majority of your employees are competitive with the market. And for those employees pay who are already competitive with the market, you don't want to backtrack on that. So you want to keep that competitiveness. In almost every case, those employees where their pay leads the market, it's because they have been here with the county a significant amount of time. So they've invested their career working with you, and you want to try to keep them as competitive as you can.
Thank you.
Yes.
We thank you for the information.
Absolutely.
Appreciate all your help, and we'll direct any questions to either Spencer or Heidi, and I'm sure they can give responses to us if you have any questions after the meeting.
Absolutely.
All right, thank
Well, I've
you.
appreciated your attention, and I'm glad to have been here this afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you for bearing with our technical difficulties.
Absolutely. It always one of those challenges.
Okay,
All right.
next
moving on
step
to Budget.
is budget discussion. And Mr. Montoro is online with us. Just a few quick comments. There haven't been many changes to the last budget review, or since the last full budget review with the full board. We are still, as everybody knows, we're still waiting on the state to finalize a budget so that we'll know what we're dealing with. I did poll some other localities in the region, and most appear to be moving ahead with budget adoption. But that again, is before we found out on Friday that the governor has called everybody back to Richmond for April the 4th. From what we can tell, there remain two main areas of question. The first is how localities will be kept whole with proposed grocery tax reductions. We've been assured from multiple areas that we will be left whole, but it could flow through the school division to do so. We're just not sure which tack they will take. And also what COLA increase will be for the compensation board positions. In addition to pay plan recommendations, which you just heard, the board can consider other discretionary items such as requests from 501c3s. However, at this point, the Finance Committee has indicated that it will be more difficult to make further expenditure decisions before we determine what the actual revenues are going to be, which we hope the state will get to very quickly when they get back in session. And finally, after doing many calculations, we have taken a new tack with revenue estimates sourced from the personal property tax. The main challenge has been determining the actual increase in vehicle valuation. Many localities we're talking with are budgeting for around a 30% increase in vehicle values. However, some are also looking at 20% and some are also looking at higher than 30%. And given that a 5% valuation or variation there can equate to $300,000 or $400,000 for the county, either up or down, the Finance Committee has asked Commissioner Weitzel to request a book valuation from NADA. And this is a process he does every fall to set values on vehicles before sending out new tax bills. And by doing this early, we'll have a much more accurate idea of what the valuations will be and be able to confidently look at options for anything you want to look at with personal property tax, and also help us determine what percentage of the PPTRA, personal property tax relief, to apply. And again, for those reasons, the Finance Committee is recommending a revision to the budget adoption schedule, initially pushing the budget schedule out a week. Typically, we would have been, or on the schedule, we would have been looking at asking for an advertisement next Monday evening, but we ask him to push that out just a little bit. And John is with us via Zoom to present the working draft document. It looks like he's already got it up here. And
Just so that everybody understands, when you've been talking about personal property tax, we're not looking to increase personal property. We're looking to decrease the rate. The problem is right now it's an unusual time that used vehicle prices are appreciating rather than depreciating. And we're just not sure what our fleet, our total book value, how much it's appreciating. That's why we got the NADA value. And while that's typically done in the fall, what the Commissioner of Revenue told us was that between now and the fall, they can sort of keep track of the vehicles that come off and the vehicles that come on, and it won't have to be a full report done again in the fall. It can just be the change, the delta between now and then. So it's not going to be a big price impact on us, because the NADA values for whatever vehicles we have in our fleet are as of January 1. So it's not like it's as of August when we typically get it.
And just to be clear, the commissioner's been very involved, and we appreciate it. And he offered, he's offering these suggestions and these ideas. So we appreciate him working with us in these unusual times. I just wanted to get that in. Sorry, Dave.
No, that's good. I just want to make sure. I mean, for anybody who may listen afterwards, we're trying to find ways to help our citizens with that impact.
yeah, I think maybe the point I should have made was we're trying to be as accurate as possible rather than guessing at it.
Yeah, because it's all the information that's been presented, and again, the commissioner with his presentations to us, he's polled numerous people around the state, numerous people up and down the valley, and it has ranged anywhere from 10% increase to as much as like 50% increase. What they're anticipating their fleet to be, and then it's been, some people are looking at it as a windfall and keeping the money and putting it in reserves or whatever. And then there's a lot of people that are looking at how they can devalue their book, you know, to give some relief or reduce the rate to give some relief to the citizens as well. So, you know, I think from finance committee, all options are still on the table. We just need a little bit more specific data about what our fleet looks like before we can make a recommendation to you, the full board.
So with that, I just turn it over to John to just go over the high level overview.
Okay, well, this sheet just basically summarizes where we are and what we presented at the last Board of Supervisors meeting. You can see we haven't changed any of the revenue estimates yet from what we presented last time. And these were the revenues here. General property taxes have gone up compared to budget, but it's basically strictly based on what has been collected so far this year. So it's a pretty conservative number. And not too much change here. On the expense side, we did make a few changes. I think just today we adjusted the fleet services budget $50,000 to account for the increase in price of gasoline. And we've made, I think Spencer has received some additional information on some of the other budgets for consolidated dispatch and the treasurers went down because of a change in the anticipated status of her staff and what she's requesting. So that ended up, we had an additional position in there, which we don't look like she needs anymore. So that reduced the budget somewhat. Fire and rescue training, the $40,000 for Spencer. What was that for again?
That was for a training mannequin that we found another fire chief talked and found another fund source with the Fire and Rescue
Right.
Association. That was a match.
Excuse me?
That was a grant match that we
Right.
pulled out of there. So you can
So
see
in the context of a $50 million budget, these are not big adjustments at the present time. And as David said, there were several areas the finance committee was considering, but it didn't seem like it made much sense to really get into it till we had a better idea where our revenue items were going to land. And there aren't that many variables, but there are big ones. So.
There are still discretionary expenses out there that we can take a look
Yeah.
at. But until you know what your revenues are, it didn't make sense for us to look at that. And I think we at our meeting last week with the school system, I think we made it clear that if the grocery tax comes back to us, we're fine. If it comes to them, then we would be looking to adjust the school's number by that dollar amount it wouldn't be an impact on them. It wouldn't be an impact on us at that point. So we could get that back.
That's really all I have to say. Not too much to talk about this time, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
The fuel service, I know we talked about that last week as far as price of fuel going up, but shouldn't there be a revenue source attached to that as well?
There is. It's a matter of fact, we're going to have to ask the board to appropriate some funds this year. The way it works is we put an annual budget number in the fleet services line, but that number is replaced by charge outs. So for example, when the schools have fuel, they come get fuel. We buy the fuel, fleet services department buys the fuel, the county buys the fuel, and there's a charge out to the schools and the sheriff's office and that type of thing. So we're going to run short this year. So we're going to have to request an appropriation there, but there will be a revenue coming back.
So I'm just wondering,
In,
Uh,
in what I've done so far, David, I have not adjusted the revenue. You are correct. So this is again,
Do we adjust
fairly conservative.
just their rate when ours changes?
Yeah, we all try to track it as we go, but it's such a volatile market right now. That's why we're finding ourselves, with $4 a gallon gas. 'Cause that's not what we pay. I mean, we get a better rate than that, um, but it's still outpacing right now. But we don't know what it's going to do in September, October next year this time.
but ultimately that should be a wash.
Well, it
Or
should
we
be.
pay going out, we got to front the money to get it, but then we get reimbursed by selling it to whether it's school, sheriff's office, whoever.
Then we budget them.
Yeah, we got to, we got to
We have
budget
to
down
pay them
too.
more.
Yeah, they budget, have to budget higher. It's a hard number to put your finger on. I mean, we've done well a lot of years. But it's getting tougher and tougher to do it.
Any questions from the board? Again, the recommendation from Finance Committee is to push everything out at least a week. I believe the state is coming back to session on Monday. And the general consensus, I think that we've heard, is they're hoping to get a budget out within 5 to 7 days. So hopefully sometime next week, we'll have a better idea of what's coming out of Richmond.
So we're looking to approve the advertisement of it 2 weeks, is that?
Instead of April 4th, I guess it would be April 11th.
Yeah.
So is that April 4th, would that be the only purpose for that?
April 4th would be just a new budget meeting to get updates on, if we have anything. Did you catch all that?
I did not.
All right, April 4th would just be a new budget meeting for any new updates that we may have. And then April 11th would be the date that we would be looking to advertise. Is that correct?
If you push it out a week, that's what it would be. And then it pushes out the entire budget schedule. So hopefully we'll have more information for you by that time. And in the meantime, I would continue to encourage any board members to seek out a member of the Finance Committee to discuss anything that you'd like to see in the budget.
Any other questions? All right, well, at this time then, we will stop the work session and we will pick up with our regular scheduled meeting at 5:30. So you got about 7 minutes or so.
Do you need me to hang around? Question mark.
Yeah, but
John, you're still live on there. Thank you for your help, Sidney.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will call the March 28th, 2022 County Supervisor meeting to order. Ms. Whitten, will you take roll for us again, please?
Supervisor Lewis,
Still present.
Supervisor Day, Supervisor Ayers,
Here,
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
Chairman McDaniel.
Here. Please stand with us for invocation, followed by pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. In peace, we pray for our citizens in their daily life and work, for our county and commonwealth, for the just and proper use of creation, for all those who are in danger, sorrow, and any kind of trouble, and for peace and unity in the world. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Per the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Executive Order 72, persons who have been fully vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus are not required to wear a mask. We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We'll do our best to take citizen comment remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. You may join by telephone, dial into one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you are calling in by telephone. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay. Recognitions and presentations is National Public Health Week. And I believe we have Steve Bolster here to accept on behalf of the Virginia Department of Health, and Vice Chair Ayers is going to read the proclamation for us.
all righty. Whereas the President of the United States traditionally designates the first full week of April as National Public Health Week, and whereas National Public Health Week is scheduled for April 4th to April 10th, 2022, and the theme is Public Health is Where You Are. And whereas since 1995, the American Public Health Association, through its sponsorship of National Public Health Week, has educated the public, policymakers, and the public health professionals about issues important to improving the public health. And whereas the Central Shenandoah Health District's mission is to protect and promote the health and well-being of residents in the Central Shenandoah Valley. And whereas the Central Shenandoah Health District serves the counties of Augusta, Bath, Highland, Rockbridge, and Rockingham, and the cities of Buena Vista, Harrisonburg, Lexington, Stanton, and Waynesboro, with an estimated combined population of 308,875. No, that's not correct. Is that right? Yes. 308,875 citizens. And whereas the Central Shenandoah Health District's public health professionals help our communities prevent, prepare for, withstand, and recover from the impact of the full range of health threats, including disease outbreaks such as the COVID-19 pandemic, national disasters, and disasters caused by human activity. And whereas the Central Shenandoah Health District's public health professionals have and continue to display an unprecedented commitment to serve our communities in response to the COVID-19 pandemic by administering local and regional programs involving testing, contact tracing, case investigations, vaccinations, outbreak investigations, and informal campaigns to combat this public health crisis. Now, therefore, we, the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors, call upon all citizens of Rockbridge County to observe the week of April 4th through the 10th, 2022 as the National Public Health Week, during which our residents may join in celebrating the dedication of our public health professionals, past and present, and their families whose support allows them to serve our communities.
Or a motion to approve? So move. Second?
Second?
Okay. Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes?
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and chair votes yes as well. Mr. Bolsher, you'd like to come forward?
Guess you signed that. I'm not sure what's happening.
You gotta get a photo preserved.
Spencer, you gonna get a picture?
Moment picture. I'll get you.
Oh, we got the photo out cover.
All right, let's do that.
Just pretend you're holding it up, Steve.
Want me to take a picture?
No.
Yes, hold on. Pause this, hold on.
We have the paper?
I have a blank one.
There you go. You hold your frame copy. All right, that'll do enough. Yeah, all right, see you, Steve.
I just can't turn on. Oh, you want to sign it right now? We don't have to vote, so
Okay.
I'll send it to him tomorrow by email.
All right, citizen comments. Is anyone signed up to speak? Address the board? Is there anyone present that wishes to address the board? Okay, anyone online?
No, sir.
Any written comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, we have our minutes from the March 14th called work session and regular meeting, and the March 15th joint meeting with the PSA and MSA staff. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Any questions, concerns, comments? Motion to approve?
So move.
Second,
Second.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes?
And chair votes yes as well. All right, amendment to the joint services agreement, maintenance of buildings and grounds. Mr. Suter?
Yes, you all may recall that the joint services agreement with the city of Lexington includes language pertaining to the city's use of the board meeting room. It provides a framework for the room's use and cost share for such. In July 2017, the city ceased use of this room and began using a space in nearby Waddell Elementary School, and subsequently ceased making payment for use of the room and upgrades to the space under the agreement. In 2021, city manager Jim Hallett approached me with a request for the city to again begin using the boardroom. And after discussions with all board members, I redrafted general terms of the original agreement and discussed individually with board members. Ms. Huffman subsequently put the conditions into an amendment to the joint services agreement, and that is included in your package. Key points of this include the original spirit of the agreement, and the cost share terms remain the same. And since the city moved out of the space in 2017, several upgrades to the building have occurred. And given that there was in the original agreement a percentage of cost share in that agreement for the city, I built back in a percentage of costs which were, avoided during that time. During that hiatus. And in order to be fair, I built in a depreciation factor based on when the improvements were made. So the total cost for those upgrades is calculated to be $12,133.47. The new agreement covers some of the areas that were not included in the old joint services agreement, including maintaining control over building policies, the county maintaining control over building policies, training and use of new technologies such as the AV equipment and door security, and a description of the standard meetings the city would hold in the room, which are typically 2 council member meetings per month and 1 planning commission meeting per month. If the board agrees to enter into agreement under these or any revised terms that you might want, it's my understanding the city would consider it a regular council meeting sometime in April. So the recommendation is just to ask any questions that you might have of me and Ms. Huffman. And if you are in agreement with this, I would just authorize me to enter into agreement subject to city council also approving.
Board, is there any questions, concerns, comments?
And this be subject to approval as to form by Ms. Huffman.
Okay, so you've heard the recommendation. It would be subject to approval by Lexington City Council and authorize the county administrator to execute on behalf of the board with approval to the form by the county attorney. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved?
And second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyon,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and chair votes yes as well. All right, continued budget discussion. We talked a little bit about this in our work session. I'm not sure there's a lot more to cover, except that the finance committees, and for those who weren't present during the work session, the finance committee is recommending delaying our schedule by at least a week in hopes to get more information from the state. I believe they reconvene on Monday, April the 4th. The hope is that we'll get more information next week about several important topics that correspond to our budget. And we're still working with the Commissioner of Revenue to try to get more specific information about our personal property fleet and the impact that will have, since vehicles are appreciating, which is abnormal, the impact that will have on our citizens and how we can help our citizens by reducing that impact. And the finance committee has been meeting on a weekly basis, and I believe we have another meeting scheduled for next week on Wednesday, or this week on Wednesday. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's pretty much every Wednesday.
So certainly if you have any questions, concerns, anything to do with budget, Mr. Lewis or myself would welcome your comments and your input, and just let us know and we'll continue to work on it. Is there any questions, comments right now? So we have the Economic Development Authority appointment. Janie Harris, term expires April the 10th, 2022. Ms. Harris is willing to be reappointed if the board so desires.
I, for one, am delighted that she is and would like to put forward a motion to reappoint Ms. Harris.
Okay, is there a second? All right. All right, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well. All right, now we have the Economic Development Authority, David Hawkins, term expires April the 10th, 2022. Mr. Hawkins is willing to be reappointed if the board so desires.
I move that we reappoint Mr. Hawkins.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
and chair votes yes as well. Central Shenandoah
Planning District Commission.
Planning District, yeah, I was trying to remember. Committee nomination, this is a nomination for appointment. Chris Sladen is willing to be appointed in this capacity. Motion to approve, Mr. Sladen.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
and chair votes yes as well.
And I just say, I thank Mr. Sladen for taking on that task as well. It's important that we have a voice at the table, and the Planning District Commission is a good organization and works well with us, but just, being there at those meetings and putting forward our needs is big. The most notable would be the VDOT study, that I think he sent, Mr. Sladen sent to everyone. That's a big deal. That just gives us a better push. So it's, you got to advocate and be there to speak for yourself. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments and thank you. I'm glad we're finding ways to fill up your time. All right, Railroad Board of Directors. Mr. Henney has resigned from that. And at this time, I don't believe we have any applications, and we're just kind of holding it until we can get it filled. Is there any questions about that, comments? Okay, move right along.
You're right into public hearings now. But
Oh,
Gotta wait.
let's do
not
it.
time yet.
Do we have anything at the end of the?
So I was looking.
Take care of our,
I'll go ahead and remind you that we have a budget meeting scheduled for Monday, April 4th here in the boardroom. Will that start at
5:30.
5:30? And then we have our monthly meeting on April the 11th. All right, and we will hold off for about 12 minutes until 6 o'clock to start our public hearing. the public hearings. First one is for Stonewall Associates LLC, 80 East Midland Trail, Lexington, Virginia, application for special exception permit for warehousing and storage in the general business B1 zoning district. Before we get started with that, I, as Chairman David McDaniel, hereby abstain from all matters, discussions, or voting related to the board's consideration of the application for a special exception permit filed by Modine Manufacturing Company, and my disclosure statement required under section 2.2-3115F is on file with the clerk to the Board of Supervisors. And I hereby turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Ayers.
Mr. Sladey, will you provide a review for us?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to share my screen. Make sure it does that on Zoom. I don't, unlike previously, I do not have formal PowerPoint presentations prepared for this evening. But to get everyone oriented on the map here, the property is outlined in magenta, known as Stonewall Square Shopping Center. Of course, along East Midland Trail towards the west is back to the city of Lexington, and towards the east is towards Buena Vista. The property that's under consideration is identified as 80 East Midland Trail, Lexington, Virginia, and is located in the general business zoning district. So as far as the zoning goes, I'm going to turn on my zoning layer. It's located, the dark burgundy is the business zone, and then the surrounding property is zoned industrial. The property we're dealing with this evening is identified as tax map 75-A-40A and consists of 12.98 acres per tax records. Stonewall Squares LLC, Stonewall Associates LLC has made an application for a special exception permit in order to utilize approximately 40,000 square foot portion of the existing building for warehousing for Modine Manufacturing. Mr. Matt Niebuhr is with Modine and his attendance this evening to represent the project. Per section 605.03-12 of the County of Rockbridge Land Development Regulations, warehouse business is a use by special exception in the B1 zoning district. On March 9th, 2022, the Planning Commission held its public hearing and has recommended approval of the special exception application with the following conditions. Number one, warehouse/storage area is limited to the existing approximately 40,000 square feet identified as 80 East Midland Trail, Lexington, Virginia 24450. And number two, all unloading and loading shall be done to the rear of the building. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Niebuhr to review any details I may have missed or answer any questions the board may have. Stop sharing the screen, but I can certainly pull it back up if needed.
Good evening. Thanks for hearing me out tonight. Appreciate your time. As Chris said, Modine's looking to rent this space at Stonewall Square, and it's really to support growth. We're thrilled that we get to continue growing our business here in Rockbridge County, Buena Vista. And as part of that, as we support growth and deal with the supply chain challenges we're facing right now, we need more space. So we're looking for this space to temporarily support storage of materials and finished goods so we can continue to support our customers and grow our business in Rockbridge County. So that's just a high level. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you, I noticed there was a condition from the Planning Commission about utilizing the rear only. Does that cause any undue hardship?
No,
I
not
mean,
at all.
traditionally that's where it would happen, but I just, as this is temporary, it just wondered if you needed more than that.
No, it's no obstacle. There's a door back there that we can utilize to get product in and out.
That's probably, it is best.
Yep.
I would agree.
When you say temporary, do you have a time frame? How long does it last? Or?
We're signing a 1-year lease for the space. That's the plan. And hopefully my expectation is by then we'll have a longer term strategy that fits with our operating plan in Buena Vista and Rockbridge that suits our needs.
Any other comments? Okay, if there are no other comments, or then I'll open up the public hearing.
No one has signed up to speak. I will recognize everyone.
No one online either.
All right. Well, with that, I'll close the public hearing. Any other board discussion?
Chris, if after the lease is up and that they no longer need it for storage? Is this, if another group moved in, would they have to come back before us? Or would the conditional use permit stay with that facility forever?
As long as not, if the future use is a permitted use, they could go right in. If the future use is a use by special exception, we would have to go through the special exception
Right, so
process.
if someone wanted to come in and use it as a warehouse, they'd have to come back.
No, sir, they would not have to come back
Okay.
as a permitted use.
And if somebody wanted to go in and do retail, they would be fine.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, and really the purpose of the square footage limited to the existing approximate square feet and the unloading and unloading, while conditions don't have to be voluntary, unlike proffers, they have to be sound, reasonable, associated with the use of land. And we staff and planning commission always do our best to make sure that, they're in line with the landowner's applicant's desires for use of the property. And also limiting to 40,000 square feet, we're also cognitive of not allowing, obviously it's a prime retail spot. So we're cognitive of losing that area for warehousing. Very supportive of Modine. We're very excited with their project on 251, obviously, and in full support of this. So we're excited to have them in the area.
I think Dr. Lyons is concerned about that just as I am. What's the highest and best use of this property? Not necessarily warehousing, but I certainly want to support Modine as they're supporting us, and there are rents associated. So, there's business being transacted there from the landlord. I would hope, that we can attract, a retail operation in the future. But all those things considered, I'm in favor. I would make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
Well, has everybody, I had one other question, if you don't mind. Can,
I don't, but I just.
Mr. Sladen, what about the other businesses? Is there any apprehension with the other businesses?
Not that I know of. So part of the public hearing process, we do certified mail to the landlord, or excuse me, to the landowner itself, and then certified mail to all the direct adjoiners, do the ads newspaper. But in addition to that, we do a zoning action pending sign on the property itself. And with this high visibility, we've had a lot of phone calls on the zoning action pending sign that all of them didn't identify themselves. But once staff stated what was on the table as far as the warehousing, really didn't have much follow-up questions. And so I can't answer directly whether there's any potential conflict with the existing tenants of the shopping center.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions? If not, I will entertain that. Go back to that motion. Mr. Lewis?
Yes, I made a motion. But we approve.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And I vote yes. I would like to turn this back over to the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Ayers. And we have Timothy Tolley, 5819 North Lee Highway, Fairfield, Virginia. Proposed rezoning from general business B1 zoning district to residential mixed R2 zoning district. Mr. Sladen?
Yes, sir. I'm going to give you another brief overview here. All right, I'm going to zoom out on the GIS. This is located, the property under consideration is a portion of the property located on the intersection of Sterrett Road and Route 11. The entire property is highlighted in magenta here. I'm going to turn off the flood zone. The property we're considering is out of the flood zone. Turn that off. All right. Again, the property is located at 5819 North Lee Highway. That's a Fairfield, Virginia address. Again, located near the intersection of North Lee Highway, Route 11 and Sterrett Road, which is 710. Further identified as tax map number, a portion of tax map number 39-29-A. Current property owner is Spirit Wind LLC, and Mr. Timothy Tolley is the contract purchaser of the proposed 0.75 acre parcel. Mr. Tolley, the potential landowner, is in attendance tonight along with the property manager, Mr. David Stahl. Property consists of the parent property, so everything's outlined in magenta here, consists of 3.942 acres per tax records and is currently located in the general business zone. That's a B1 zoning district. The application is for rezoning of a portion of the property consisting of 0.75 acres from the general business zone B1 to the residential mix, which is R2, in order to convert the existing building into multifamily dwellings. On March 9th, 2022, the Planning Commission held its public hearing and has recommended approval of the rezoning with acceptance of the proffer statement. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Stahl and Mr. Tolley and/or Mr. Tolley to come on up to review any details and answer any questions the board may have.
Chris,
Yes,
you're only rezoning
it's
an acre and an acre and 3/4?
it's actually 0.05 acres, and so in your package you have the parcel, a plat of the parent parcel, if you will, and then a plat showing what is to be rezoned. So approximately, and this is going to be ballpark, but approximately it's the northern corner, including the building and all parking, associated parking area. And this is going to be rough. But with that being said, it's approximately, see how good I am. That's 0.749 acres. So not too terribly off as far as acreage goes, but I'm sure I'm off on the size or the dimensions, I'm sorry. But no color. I'll turn that as yellow. So it's approximately some layout such as that's outlined on yellow here. The building, the associated parking, that type of thing. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, turn the floor over to these gentlemen, and if needed, we can bring that back up.
Well, good afternoon. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak in front of you. But we're excited about this project. It's been vacant for a number of years. Originally, my understanding is it was a strictly commercial building, which didn't go well. They in turn got a special exemption, if I'm correct, to have 4 apartments on the 2nd and 3rd level, 2 on each floor. The bottom 2 stayed commercial. Our thought is to make it all residential apartments. There is a need for it. Right now, I'll tell you, as a property manager, things are very tight as far as rental is concerned. We're getting calls every day for rental properties, and there just is really nothing available. So we're excited about it. We are going to have a public water and sewer. We've already posted that with the bank giving us the adequate funds to go ahead and do that as well. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you. Representing Mr. Tolley, I guess, at this point.
Any questions from the board? All right, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
At this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up to speak?
There's no one physically signed up to speak.
Is there anyone online?
No, sir.
All right.
I do have one letter to read.
Yes, sir.
This is attention to rezoning request for 5819 North Lee Highway, Fairfield, Virginia by Tim Tolley. This is submitted by Don Wetzel. It says, Dear Planning Commission members and Board of Supervisors of Rockbridge County, I'm the current owner of the property at 5819 North Lee Highway, Fairfield. I purchased the property in 1998, and we were blessed to fulfill part of our vision of the property and successfully used for many years for my health and wellness business. My wife and business partner passed away in March of 2016, and by the end of the year, I chose to close the Fairfield office and move all my business to the Stanton office. I am writing today to express support of the rezoning request for this property. From what I have seen, Mr. Tolley has a nice vision of the property, and one that I believe will serve Rockbridge County well. Certainly, it will be an asset to Rockbridge County to have someone with a vision to occupy it, to support the county. It's a beautiful building and is landmark to Rockbridge County. Multi-residential usage of the building should support many of the local businesses of Fairfield, and the location should not interfere with other residential or many small business neighbors. Sincerely, Don Wetzel. And that's all the written comments we've received.
Okay. This time we will close the public hearing. It's board discussion.
Mr. Slayton, I'm just not quite clear on the, I understood it as Mr. Day asked it, a portion of the total property is being requested. Is that, could you just explain the process of how, are we dividing these two?
We
properties
will
into-
eventually be dividing
Right, that's
these
the
two.
piece
So,
that-
so yes,
I just
we're,
wanted to be clear.
we have a proposed, in your package, you have a proposed subdivision plat that also serves as the rezoning plat itself.
I see.
And so this one was somewhat unusual because it's sort of the chicken or egg type situation where the current facility is utilized as a drain field, but this proposed use and the acreage associated with the proposed use requires it to be hooked up to public water and public sewer. So what I've talked with Mr. Tolley about is bonding, a bonding letter of credit and/or cash escrow of the required amount to hook it up to public water and public sewer. And so I'll have that in hand prior to the subdivision, because the current owner isn't necessarily interested in hooking it up to public water and sewer. And of course, the future owner isn't going to do that until the property is sold and the subdivision plat goes hand in hand with the transfer.
Thank you. Yeah.
So this, to answer your question directly, this is only rezoning a 0.05 acre portion of this property, which is verbatim, which is proposed to be subdivided.
And one other question was, where is the access to the property?
Currently, the access and Mr. Stahl and Mr. Tolley may come up to correct me, but the current access is both North Lee Highway and Sterrett Road. And so I'm assuming that they're going to grant accesses on both the existing right of ways.
Mr. Wetzel is Spearman. Gotcha. Okay. Just wanted to be clear. I couldn't imagine it being anything different, but just wondered. Thank you, Mr.
Any other comments, questions?
No.
Okay, you heard the recommendation. There's a motion. So moved. Motion to approve as presented. And a second. All right, Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. Okay, we have Nicholas and Bethany Iapka, 1372 Rafine Road, Rafine, Virginia. Application to amend a condition associated with a previous approved special exception permit for a kennel in the agricultural and general use A2 zoning district. Mr. Slayton?
If you don't mind, I'll share my screen one more time. Get this going. All right, Nicholas and Bethany Ioka are in attendance tonight representing the project. I'm going to share my screen. The property is on the south side of Rafine Road. It would be west of the village of Rafine. And so looking at this map, let me make sure, yep. So if you would be heading towards, if you pull out of the driveway and head east, it's going to be going towards the town of Rafine, towards the vineyard, towards the town of Rafine. And then of course, heading west is going to be heading towards the Wade's Mill area. The property is located at 1372 Rafine Road. That's a Rafine address and has made application to amend the condition associated with the previously approved special exception permit. The property is located in the agricultural and general use district. That's the A2 zoning district. Further identified as tax map numbers 27-A-23C and consists of 1.47 acres per tax records. Per section 603.03-5 of the County of Rockbridge Land Development Regulations, a commercial kennel is a use by special exception in the A2 zoning district. The existing special exception permit and associated conditions were approved by the Board of Supervisors on January 28, 2019, with the following conditions. Number 1, breeding of golden retrievers only. Number 2, limited to 10 female and 2 male golden retrievers for breeding. Number 3, puppies shall be kept inside of the dwelling until a permanently enclosed structure can be constructed. And number 4, boarding and grooming operations shall be prohibited. Per the written description of plans, the proposed amendment is to remove the limit of number of dogs associated with the dog breeding business. On March 9th, 2022, the Planning Commission held its public hearing and has recommended the amendment of the existing condition number 2 to state, quote, limit to 30 golden retrievers for breeding purposes, including any visiting stud dogs. All other conditions remain in effect. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Ioka, to review any additional details and answer questions that the board may have. And in anticipation for some discussion, I'll leave this up for a moment.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for considering our request for increasing the limit of our golden retriever breeding operation. Over the last few years since you've granted us the application that the special permit, our business has grown, and we serve people up and down the East Coast that are looking for quality golden retrievers. And so as we have seen the amount of people who have put down deposits, we have long waiting lists, we would like to ask for the ability to be able to have more dogs, to be able to raise more quality dogs, to be able to keep up with the demand for the people who want to purchase our dogs. So this is a growing business, obviously, in Rockbridge County, and we think that it will serve the county well. So.
Any questions from the board for Mr. Ioka?
I have one. I was present with the original application.
Yes.
and support that. And I want to support business where I can, and I agree. I'm glad that your business is growing, and property rights also, all these things. It is a small site. And I have to say that the main question I have for you, what I remember and what I felt was when you all came first, what I thought was a wonderful plan was to have most of the runs or kennels. I don't want to misuse a term, but in the rear, but behind your house,
yes.
Nicely shaded,
Yes.
and I've seen those.
Yes.
Not as a trespasser, but as a drive-byer.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. But at the same time, there are I don't know, temporary runs or different types, closer to your other property and closer to the road.
Yes.
And I just remember you saying that wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
So, everything was going to be behind, so, and the other piece is I know you heard in the planning commission, having served for a while, there was the incident in Rafine. So I have to say that while this is different,
yes.
I'm just, don't want to get bitten by that.
Yes, I understand.
So, what can you offer any, comment on that? What did the need change? Did the desire, just anything you could offer would be
so
helpful.
I guess I'll address the pens that you referenced that are closer to the road. I do not remember the conversation at all that we said we wouldn't put anything out closer to the road. We do have the majority of our pens in the back. The ones that we do have right off to the side are convenient for us. Because the dogs come into our house, into the basement areas. When we came before, we had the basement was a 2-car garage. Since then, we have completely renovated that space. Instead of 2 doors there that are garage doors, there are 4 windows there. And that is actually dog kennel. So the dogs all stay in our basement in the old garage parts. We have cabinets and all sorts of things in there now. And it's a place where the people come in and they purchase their puppies and they see them all there. What those pens are there is that some of them are for dogs that stay out there a majority of the time. We believe that our dogs, golden retrievers, are healthier if they can have a good amount of space to run, not be cooped up in a small space. And so that's why we have them where they are. They're still under shade. They still have trees around them. And so on and so forth. But really the reason, but I'm sorry, I don't remember anything to do with that we didn't say that we wouldn't put something out there. I'm sorry if for some reason it got convened that way. That was not my intention. However, where we have them is somewhere where we thought was perfectly fine to be able to have the dogs for runs and things like that to to have them housed and kept and counts, things like that. It's easier for us to be able to let the dogs out right there from our kennel instead of having to hike them all the way in the back to be able to go out and run and get exercise. So in behind us, we do have more dogs in smaller pens, a 10 by 10 pen, plus they have a large run area that they can get out and run the entire length back and forth of our yard. So they get plenty of exercise. But that's basically the reason why they're right there by the house, is for the convenience of us, but also to give that extra exercise space for them. So hope that answers something. If you have any other details you want to add, I'd be delighted to try to make it more clear.
Thank you. That's fine for now. Thank you.
Can I ask just
Yes,
a
ma'am.
couple of general questions? When it limited to 10 females, is that
Yes.
10 breeding intact females?
Yes,
So-
ma'am.
So I would presume that you have dogs that have passed their breeding age and they're correct.
Correct.
And that is not counted in the 10. Once a dog has been altered, then it does not count towards your 10.
Correct.
So I imagine if you're operating a breeding facility, you're talking about 10 breeding females. They will go on to live for considerably longer after that, one would
Yeah.
hope, if they're well taken care of.
Yes.
And so my guess is that to have 10 breeding females, you might need to have 30 or 40 dogs. I don't know what that number is, but I know it's a considerable amount. So
Yes.
this is not how many dogs you have on the property.
Correct.
This is, all right.
The breeding dogs.
Right,
Correct.
just the breeding dogs. And then it doesn't also obviously count the puppies. So in any
Right.
one time, you might have 10 breeding dogs and 30 older dogs and 50 puppies. Considerable.
So when our dogs retire and when we consider them to be an older dog, we don't keep them as our pets. We have actually a whole list of people waiting in line so that when we retire our dogs, they go to good homes. And most of them we give away, actually. So it all depends, though, if the individual wants us to do XYZ with the dog before they take it, or if they just take it as soon as we are ready to retire the dog. So we don't actually have dogs that are not in our breeding program that are older dogs at our facility. They go very quickly to people. We have, like I said, a list of people waiting for us to retire dogs because of all of our dogs that we breed are all certified. So they have hips, elbows, eyes, hearts, all that.
But
they're
there will be
completely
dogs
certified.
that don't, I mean, even the best breeding
Yes,
program has dogs
absolutely.
that do not pass.
Yes,
those
ma'am.
things.
And we have had young dogs. So when we talk about young dogs, and this year alone, even though we purchased from very good lines, we've had 3 young dogs that did not pass, that we could not breed. And we put considerable amount of financial into them and we gave them away. So that is true. Yes, they would have been considered underneath that 10, but they never were.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you would then have them fixed and then give them away. Okay, that helps. And how long does a dog stay? I mean, how long will they be with you?
Well,
breeding?
it all depends. Hopefully, if everything goes well and they're a very healthy dog and they produce good puppies that are all sound and we don't have any genetic problems at all, we're looking at least 6, if not 8 years. So hopefully within that 6 to 8 year range, we will be able to keep them. That's our hope anyhow.
Have you ever had any complaints about your dogs barking?
We have not.
Okay, well, that's good.
Any other questions? Mr. Ag? Okay, at this point, we'll open up the public hearings. Everyone signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Anyone online?
No, sir.
Anyone in attendance? Okay. All right, we will close the public hearing. Oh,
I do have a letter.
I'm sorry, Mr. Slade.
This is from Mr. Thomas Bundy, South River District. It starts off by saying, after watching the discussion of the request by the Planning Commission, I would like to make the following observations and suggestions regarding the issue. It should be remembered that the special exception permit only applies to 1.47 acres. While there are discussion about the other property the Iacocas own around the property in question, there is nothing in the permit that states this exception is contingent upon the continuation of the current situation. Therefore, it would be possible for the 1.7 acres to be sold with the special permit to allow for 30 dogs. Conversely, the other properties could be sold or put into other uses with a special exception for 30 dogs applying to less than 1.5 acres. I don't think anyone would want to see either of those outcomes. I have no reason to believe the applicants would do either of these things, but the permit as written does not expire if the current situation changes. The permit runs with the land and applies to whomever owns the land. Therefore, I recommend the permit be limited to the current situation of the applicants with the surrounding properties in aggregate. In addition, I would like to see a provision added where that would require a periodically review of the conditions for the continuation of the special exception permit. I suggest such review should occur every 3 to 5 years. Thank you for your kind consideration of these comments. Tom Bundy, South River District. And that's all the written comments I have.
So we will close.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a suggestion. I would like to continue the public hearing if we possibly could. I'm not sure when I'm supposed to say that. I don't know if I guess, I don't know how else to say it.
It would be before we close it.
Yeah, so I've done that. I just, the other piece of consideration for me here is there's another application that Iokas have for another property that the planning commission hasn't addressed yet. So from my perspective, as you know, I had a question about that. I do, just to be honest, about the number of dogs that the planning commission is sending us here. I would prefer to have the planning commission's advice and recommendation for the other application as well before we address this one formally. And if we continue the public hearing, we could have the planning commission's next meeting, their other application is active, I believe, and would be addressed. So we would have some more information from the results of the planning commission before we were to make a decision. That would be my preference if the board would acquiesce to continuing the public hearing to our,
I think that would be wise.
not our next meeting, but the second meeting in April, right?
April 25th, I believe.
April 25th, which would keep us in a 30-day window of needing to take action. But if we continue, I think that even makes it a little more flexible.
And the next application is not with this property, but an adjoining.
That's my understanding. Yes, ma'am. Is a property in fairly close proximity.
Yeah, let me,
a mile or so. Mile and a half.
Yes, and I'd emailed y'all the update to the planning commission. So there are 2 pending applications. The planning commission, of course, took action on the 1372 Rafine Road, but if I could share my screen one more time. The second application is associated with 1492 Rafine Road, which I'll give you a proximity. It's about 1200 to 1300 feet east of the existing property that we're discussing. And so the other holdings that Mr. Bundy spoke of is the family now, unlike the original time period, the Ioka family now, Nicholas and Bethany, I should say, since the original permit, have acquired 1 lot in the Ridgemore subdivision, which is directly behind them, approximately 70 acres, I believe, to the west of them, and then this second dwelling. These both are vacant properties, and they've also acquired a second dwelling that has a pending application for a commercial kennel that includes breeding and maybe a boarding component of it, but we're chatting about that. So the Planning Commission at their March 9th, 2022 meeting obviously took action on this, made the recommendation as stated earlier in my presentation, but delayed taking action on the 1492 application. I think it's 1492. I'm zooming down. 1492 application to get some additional information from the family. And so if we continue the public hearing, there's a difference between continuing and closing public hearing. Obviously, if we close the public hearing, y'all have, per land development regulations, the Board of Supervisors has 30 days to act on the application from the date of the public hearing. And so that date would continue until April 25th, and you'd have 30 days to act on the application from that date. if we close the public hearing. But if we remain open, the public hearing, that date the 30 days moves until the close of the public hearing. With that being said, in order to continue the public hearing, staff will have to advertise accordingly, ads in the newspaper, certified mail, and make sure the zoning action pending is still up. Very, very similar to what we've done in the past on continued, verbatim what we've done on the past on continued public hearings.
So we have a recommendation to continue public hearing.
Second.
Mr. Lyons, any concerns? You good? Mr. Day? You good? You good? All right. So
do we need to vote on that, Ms. Huffman?
need to vote.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I make a motion that we continue the public hearing.
motion, second.
Second. Mhm.
All right, Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. Okay, we have Robert Huff, 40 Wiley Lane, Goshen, Virginia. Application for a variation of the standards associated with the time frame requirement associated with a family subdivision. Mr. Slayton?
Yes, sir. Let me zoom here. Miss Lana Nicely is in attendance this evening representing Mr. Huff. Let me zoom out here a little bit. First of all, let me share my screen. Right. So the Huff property is highlighted in magenta. It consists of, let's see, consists of 13.68 acres located on the south side of Bratton's Run Road. And I'm sitting here jumbling around, but let me zoom out one time. So Bratton's Run Road is running to the southwest in this area, is going back towards Carrs Creek, and to the northeast, if you will, is going to Goshen. So you actually turn off Bratton's Run on Tree Lane, which is a private road. Then you go to Texas Lane, which is a private road to Mr. Huff's property. So Mr. Robert N. Huff has made an application for a variation of the standards associated with the time frame requirement for a family member to voluntarily transfer a piece of property land associated with a family subdivision. The property is located in the southwestern side of intersection of Texas Lane, private road, and Wiley Lane, also a private road, as identified as tax map number 20-2-16B. The property is located in the Walker Street District. Property is located in the agricultural and general use district. Again, that's the A2 zoning district. And per section 302.207 of the County of Rockbridge Land Development Regulations, a parcel of land approved as a family subdivision may not be voluntarily transferred to anyone other than the immediate family member for a period of 5 years after the approval of the subdivision plat. Per section 302.207, that same code section, an exception can be made to this requirement may be considered per section 913 of the Land Development Regulations. The family subdivision was approved by the Office of Community Development on November 3rd, 2017. And therefore, without this waiver, the timeframe requirement of the property cannot be voluntarily transferred to a non-family member until November 3rd, 2022. On March 9th, 2022, the Planning Commission held its public hearing and has recommended approval of the special exception permit. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Ms. Lana Nicely to review any additional details and answer any questions the board may have. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but if needed, we can certainly pull it back up.
I'm an associate broker with Flint Realty. I'm the agent that has been working with Mr. Huff to try to sell this property. Shortly after he purchased this property, which he intended to retire there, he was still working in New Jersey and his wife was living there on a part-time basis. She suddenly passed away there in the home. And not long after that, his sister and brother-in-law, from whom he had acquired the property, moved. They sold their portion of the remaining land and moved out of state. So naturally, it became no longer a really desirable property for him to be there. But in the meantime, he has continued to try to hold on to this property, trying to keep it and make use of it. And then of all things, COVID hit. So not only was it emotionally hard to maintain the property, but then it became financially hard to maintain the property. We have been able to identify a buyer. We are under contract. They've been very patient. We've been under contract with them since October, the end of October. Mr. Huff has in no way tried to circumvent that regulation that was in place. When he purchased the property, he fully intended to retire there, live with his wife, be a neighbor to his sister. As Chris stated earlier, that regulation will expire in the end of October or November, I guess, of this year. So he's merely requesting that we give a waiver, an exemption at this time, so that he would be able to go ahead and sell the property to these folks that wish to buy it at this time. Any questions for me?
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Nyson.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open up public hearing. Is there anyone signed up?
No one signed up.
Do you have any written comments?
I do not have any written comments.
Anyone online?
No, sir.
All right, we will close the public hearing. Board discussion, any comments?
It's something, this is not one of those things that by special exception goes with the land forever or something, right? I mean, this is a one-time.
That's correct. This
exception.
is actually under the subdivision ordinance rather than the zoning portion of the ordinance, and amounts to a waiver of the subdivision regulations. But the process in the land development regulations for doing it says it shall be done like a special exception permit. So that's the procedural framework we're in.
The only thing we will be doing tonight, if we approve this, would be just hastening the process. So in November, this would expire anyway.
That's correct.
All right.
Any other comments, questions? Is there a motion?
I move we approve, help Mr. Huff.
All right. and there's- Second, Mr. Day. Okay, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons. Yes. And chair votes yes as well. Okay, consideration of readoption of the continuity of government ordinance. Something?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we discussed this at the last meeting, and the board requested scheduling a public hearing on readoption of this ordinance to allow some flexibility in the event that there's any continued need for postponing deadlines or holding electronic meetings or whatever might be necessary as a result of this continuing pandemic. So with things starting to trend downward and less need for a state of emergency, keep in mind that this ordinance relies on the state of emergency for its existence. So it's here for public hearing. The proposed ordinance is in your packet, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
One more time, the state of emergency is set to expire April.
April 6th.
6th. Okay. I couldn't remember 6th or 8th. But.
No. All right, we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up? Have we received any written responses? Anyone online? No, sir. Have you received any written comments or anything? Okay. All right. All right, so at this time, we will close the public hearing, board discussion. So you said that the ordinance is relying upon the state of emergency, and the state of emergency is set to expire
the state of emergency is not set to expire, but the board would
The
need
ordinance.
to take action to terminate that state of emergency.
Okay.
And should you do that next week, that would nullify the basis for this ordinance.
I like giving the board flexibility. The more flexibility, the better. That would be why I would opt to and hope we would not need it, but.
Ms. Huffman, would you speak to that flexibility just a little bit? I mean, with this, it allows you still have to have 3 present for a meeting, correct?
You do not under this ordinance.
You do not. I
You
thought
do
still had-
under your electronic meeting policy.
Okay.
You still have to have a quorum present in the room, but the continuity of government ordinance was the one that was adopted to allow all board members to participate on Zoom rather than being present in the room. And there were only a couple of meetings, I think, where that actually happened. Most of the time, there was a quorum here in the board meeting room, but in rereading this, I realized we need to go back at some point and reapprove those minutes that were approved when there was not a quorum present as provided in our ordinance. But that's for another day.
All right, any other questions, comments, or a motion?
Do we have a time limit on this? When we approve it, did we do 3 months? Is
The
that-
maximum permissible is 6 months, and that's how it's drafted. If you'd like to reduce that time period, you can.
I make a motion that we extend it to the 6 months.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well. Thank you. All right, so we already discussed a budget meeting on Monday, April 4th, here at 5:30. And I believe that's all. Do you have anything else, Mr. Slater? Does the board have any other comments? Anything you want to bring forward tonight? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And second?
Second?
All right, Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Thank you, everyone.